your youth is your most precious resource. I remember reading a book a long time ago by a famous multimillionaire, Felix Dennis, who's actually the founder of Maxim magazine. And he was not just Maxim magazine, but he ran an entire publishing empire in the UK. And he was giving advice for how to become wealthy. And his standards of wealth were extremely high. His net worth is, I think, $750 million before he died. He died not too long ago from cancer. But he had this amazing chapter which really made me think twice, and I never will forget it, where he talks about just how precious of a resource youth is. And he put it like this, in a nutshell. He said that if he could take his entire empire, publishing empire, worth $750 million, and if he could trade that to become 20 years old again, and he was writing this probably in his 60s, so if he could trade all of everything he's developed and earned to be 20 years old again, but losing all of it, so he's sort of starting from scratch, he would take that deal. That's how much your youth is worth. If you use it properly, assuming you use it properly and that you don't squander it. But what's happening with most people these days is that they're squandering their youth. It's extremely easy to squander your youth these days, especially if you're growing up in a developed part of the world where life is relatively easy. Your parents are paying for stuff for you. You don't really need to work very hard. You can just play video games and MMOs and Fortnite and all this sort of stuff. And you can just sort of like live this numbed existence where you're just doing the bare minimum to survive. This is what it means to squander your youth. Or to squander it by partying all the time with your friends, or to squander it in various kinds of young, immature relationships which go around in circles. They're dysfunctional, they don't go anywhere, and they always break up. And so be very, very careful about how you're investing your time. And this should really start once you get to like 15 years old. Once you're already 15, you're at a point in your life where you need to be developing and investing into your future. That's what most of your time should be spent doing, whether that's through school, through work, through independent projects that you're doing, whatever. There's lots of different ways that you can be investing in yourself. We talked about some of that in part 1. You're finding your passions and you're following those, but it's not just passion. You have to think more strategically about how you're going to be investing your most precious resource, which is your time and your youth and the energy that you have while you're young. See, because it's all going to get much harder as you get older, because as you get older, you're going to have health problems. You're going to have lower energy. Your hormones are going to start to dip after your 30s. Your mental peak is going to start to decline after your 30s. You're going to have all sorts of commitments and obligations as you get older, because you're probably going to develop, you're going to acquire a house that's going to tie you down. You're going to develop longer term relationships with friends and with intimate partners and marriage and children, perhaps. All of that is going to tie you down. You're going to get tied down by your career, tied down by all these commitments you make. So right now, between the ages of like 15 and 30, let's say, that's a solid 15 years right there. That's where your entire life can be made or lost in that period. Now, I'm not saying that if you're past 30 and you haven't worked on your life, then you're hopeless. So don't turn this into some victim mindset or some limiting belief system. You can still turn your life around even in your 40s and 50s, but it's harder. It's a lot harder, right? So you want to start your life on the right foot. Do not waste your life in stupid activities that don't pay you anything back. And I don't necessarily mean just money. And I say this even though I myself have squandered a lot of my youth playing video games. So I totally get it. If you're stuck playing some video game and you're sinking hundreds and thousands of hours into these online games and whatever else, or you're watching a bunch of TV or screwing around on YouTube and Facebook, and this is taking literally hundreds and thousands of hours of your life. Hey, I've done that stuff. I've played MMOs. I've gotten sucked into these sorts of time sinks. And your life, even in your youth, your life is still long enough that you can still screw around. You don't need to live a perfect life. So don't become neurotic about this and become some sort of workaholic where you're just working all the time. You're not allowing yourself to enjoy a video game here or there, or a movie or a TV show, or to watch some YouTube or whatever. You can enjoy life. So don't get this idea that I'm trying to program you with this belief that you need to be working nonstop all the time. That itself is a trap and a toxic mindset. So by no means am I saying that. But also just be aware that almost everybody around you, your friends, your coworkers, your family members, they are squandering so much of their life and so much of their time. And they're setting a bad example for you in most cases. Of course, there's a few rare exceptions here and there. You can find good role models. But for the most part, people are squandering their time. And it's easier than ever to squander your time because entertainment these days is so ubiquitous. It's free, it's cheap, there's all these streaming services. You can just sit there and watch decades and decades of old shows and reruns of stuff. And there's a giant catalog of video games to play, and there's virtual reality that's coming. And it's only getting better, and graphics are getting better, and video games are getting juicier, and all of this, and you've got pornography, and so our society, in a sense, is becoming too decadent. If you're living in a developed country, it's too easy. It's getting so easy that your greatest enemy is just combating the complacency and laziness and the taking of life for granted that is happening all around you, amongst your peers. So you want to avoid falling into that complacency.